Good afternoon. So I had a lot of slides to tell you about what happened in KZN starting in the 40s, and graphs presenting data on shark catches, but you guys probably know most of that story, and I don't have enough time to tell you about what's happening in KZN and in Reunion, so I'm going to just focus mostly on Reunion. But I want to raise a few points before we go to Reunion, and that the first thing is that in response to the shark attacks, KZN set gill nets to catch sharks. I'm just going to give you one figure, that on average in the 2000s, about 1,023 animals were caught per year in the nets, and you'll have to read in Jeremy and Sheldon's paper in 2011, Reducing the Environmental Impact of Shark Control Programs, if you want to look that up and see a little bit more about that. I'm going to give you some definitions. So targets are the species that they aim to catch, and then there's bycatch, the bystanders that are caught unintentionally. In KZN, the targets are Zambesis, whites, and tigers. So logically, to me, everything else is bycatch. Of the 1,000 animals that were caught every year, about 10% of them were Zambesis, whites, and tigers. The rest are other large sharks like raggies, hammerheads, duskies. There are also dolphins, turtles, rays. And the other important statistics is that about 25% of the animals are released alive. Over the past 20 years, Sharks Board has made a lot of improvements to reduce their impact on the environment. And recently they are evolving more rapidly than they ever have, with a lot of great new ideas. And one of the things that they've done is they've changed half of their nets for drumlines, which are baited hooks. And this has reduced the bycatch a lot. The other thing I want to mention is that the Sharks Board has got a non-lethal alternative that they've been working on, an electrical shark repellent. Sharks are sensitive to electricity, and this can be used to deter them. Sharks Board's made a cable with a series of electrodes that forms a continuous barrier, and the technological principle is good. They're sure that white sharks are repelled. It's about to be tested on Zambesis and one day on tigers too. Unfortunately, things move slowly, and also deploying it in KZN in our big surf is not going to be very easy, which leads me to the last thing I want to tell you about KZN. We've got difficult conditions to work in. Our large swell, our shifting sediment, they make it very difficult to secure and maintain anything close to shore and keep it there. And our brown water makes it almost impossible to see anything in the water for most of the time. So these other ideas about detecting sharks visually are also very difficult to put to use in KZN. So let's go east like I did in July and see what happens in Reunion. Starting in 2011, they had a spate of shark attacks, and this was a sudden and drastic increase in the number of shark attacks, and it's been unprecedented anywhere else in the world. Again, Zambesis are responsible for most of the attacks, though tigers have also been implicated. And in 2013, they began a shark culling program, and their organization is called the Shark Security Center. They decided against using gill nets, but they do use baited hooks. They use two different kinds. This is the first kind. Most of them are drumlines, but they have this smart technology. So when there's a strike on the line, a signal is sent which alerts the local crew, and they launch and inspect the catch. They also use these bottom set lines for short periods, like 2 hours at a time. They set 2 or 3 times a week, up to 25 hooks on the line. So this graph has a lot more detail on it than we need. It shows the number of individuals caught for each species. Don't worry about the species and don't worry about the colors. I want you to notice 2 species, the Zambesi sharks and the tiger sharks. They constitute 40% of the catch. This is the same graph, and it's still not important what species are plotted, but now you can look at the colors. And I want you to notice how many of the individuals are found alive and then released. So that's the green and the blue. So not many animals die on the hook. on the hooks, there's about 80% of the non-target individuals are released alive. And this is a very good release rate compared to conventional drumlines that are used not only in South Africa, but also in Australia and in Brazil. So what is the key to their high target-to-catch ratio? We talked about it, and they say that possibly one of the most important things is that they set their hooks at night, which is when sharks are most active, and then they retrieve their gear in the morning. They also have an adaptive strategy. So when they've had several hammerheads sharks caught successively, or a moray eel is caught, then they don't fish there, or they don't fish at all for a few days. They set their hooks close to the seabed where the Zambesis forage, and they use good quality bait because Zambezi sharks are fussy eaters. And they believe that their tackle also increases specificity. If we think about the high release rate, what are the important elements there? And the most important thing is that animals are rarely on the hook for more than 2 hours. So they respond to the strike alerts within an hour or two, and the bottom set lines are only deployed for a short time. So could we use any of these ideas in KZN? Well, some of them are too expensive for us. Logistically, there are lots of difficulties. Like in Reunion, they launched through harbours, whereas in KZN, they mostly launch through the surf, and you can't do that at night or any time of the day. It's not a good time. There's also issues around staff working hours and being on call. It's hard when everybody's used to doing things a certain way. And then there's also a big issue about the perceptions of reduced fishing effort. So fishing effort's defined as how much fishing gear is in the water and for how long. And theoretically, just fishing at night or only for 2 hours at a time would be reducing the fishing effort, which could affect bather safety. So the answer is no, we can't really adopt any of their elements, of their fishing elements. The situations differ, and so solutions differ. But also there's this issue that they haven't solved the problem, and we have. They still have shark attacks. They had a shark attack at a protected beach this year, and we haven't had one since 1999. So what I most want to tell you about is the vision that the guys at the Shark Security Centre in Reunion have. They're interested in a variety of methods, with each of them diminishing a part of the risk. They know that not all solutions are suitable for all situations, and they envisage a different mix at different spots. So in addition to the baited hooks, they also have these underwater shark spotters. They're testing drones and sonar and various exclusion nets at the moment. So they call this their successive barriers approach. Their methods of protecting bathers, or in general methods of protecting bathers, fall into different categories, and they range from hard methods like culling sharks, which they've labeled as prevention, to softer methods like detecting sharks, and to these ideas of improving knowledge and about the biology and the behavior of sharks. All these things can be used to keep people safe. And I really like, the thing I like the most is that they're creating a toolkit of solutions. They've got a schedule for investigating various potential solutions that they've prioritized for testing. There are various stages and various criteria that they are working through for each potential alternative, and I'll tell you about some of them quickly. So one of them is the SharkSafe barrier that was developed in the Western Cape. It's a magnetic deterrent, or visual as well, and it's promising, but it's expensive. They've tested various ways to physically exclude sharks. 2 of them failed, but one of them has worked. They've been testing drones to detect sharks visually from above, and they find that the weather has a big effect. So ideal conditions, it's possible to see sharks up to 4 meters deep, but conditions that aren't ideal, you can't see very much. They've been testing a multi-beam sounder, which under ideal conditions can detect sharks at 200 meters away, depending on the size of the shark. But noise confounds the signal and in non-ideal situations, so they have to develop this further. So there are some things that they've tested, and some of them have shown promise, but none of them is really feasible, perfectly feasible, and able to roll out easily. But preventing shark attack is a very difficult problem. And if you don't have a good solution, then they can, I don't know, an heuristic approach is a reasonable approach. So I think they've got a good philosophy, trying a few different things, testing and evaluating, tweaking here, improving by iteration, with an evolution towards a reliable solution. And they're doing it in a systematic way. So there's obviously a need for finding non-lethal alternatives. And I think that Richards Bay could be a good laboratory for us to look at a variety of different ways. It has a higher shark catch. It has more nets and baited hooks than 95% of KZN's beaches. And it has a very higher catch per unit effort than most of the beaches. The community and the municipality are open to change. There's a small surfing fraternity that we can work with, and it has a harbour launch. So some of the obstacles can be sidestepped by working at Richards Bay. And I'd like to leave you with this image because it speaks to a variety of approaches being investigated in stages with potential for improvement by iteration. So thank you very much.